Welcome to another episode of the Australian Muscle Podcast. As always, this episode is brought to you by Australian Muscle and Australian Muscle the Gym, providing great supplements and free advice since 1995. Proudly South Australian and family owned. In this episode, I go for another chat with bodybuilding historian and filmmaker Wayne Gallasch. Just returned from filming at the 2018 Olympia weekend, Wayne gives the most comprehensive review on all the prone divisions. From being backstage to front of stage, Wayne was at every division and gives his unique perspective on all the place getters. We analyse the battle between Phil and Shawn pose by pose. Was it close or did Shawn dominate? Wayne was there backstage when the announcement was made and tells us the surprising reactions of everyone there. What did Phil do when he came off stage? And many more insights that have not been made public. I always enjoy chatting to Wayne as his knowledge and history of bodybuilding is unsurpassed. Don't forget, visit Wayne's website gmv.com.au for the world's biggest collection of bodybuilding DVDs and digital downloads. I hope you enjoy listening to Wayne as much as I did. Welcome everyone to episode number 8 of the Australian Muscle Podcast. And I'm pleased to be here again with Wayne Gallasch at his beautiful home in the Adelaide Hills. We will be doing our second interview with Wayne, and this will be pretty well dedicated as a Mr. Olympia episode. Welcome aboard, Wayne.
Thank you, Ken, and it's good to talk about the Olympia. In past years, I've written about it sometimes, but I've never ever spoken about it, so this is something of a first.
Yeah, no, and it's been interesting. There hasn't been many real dissections of the Olympia that I've even seen. A few written reports online, but that's about it. Before we go on, I'll just let the listeners know that if you're interested in a full background on Wayne, go back and look at refer to our podcast number 5, where we spoke with Wayne a few months ago on his whole history in world and Australian bodybuilding. And it's pretty well known around the world that Wayne is one of the most noted historians on bodybuilding. The knowledge Wayne has on every contest, every competitor is pretty well unsurpassed, and I think that's pretty well known. You tend to agree?
Well, it helps when you've been around for a long time and you've been to probably 1,000 contests. I've never tried to work it out, but
That's
it would
right.
be a huge number of contests. And the good thing is I never get bored with it.
Yeah.
Everyone is fresh, new. I look forward to it. I look to the challenge, and that's partly why I keep going, but we can talk more about that a bit later.
So how many Olympias is this now that you've been to?
Well, this was my 20th Olympia in a row in Las Vegas,
Yep.
and it was the 20th one for Las Vegas because it started there in 1999.
Oh, so it's been 20 years already in. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have never thought it was that 20.
20th one
Yep.
from 1999 to 2018, and the first one was when Ronnie won his second title back in 99, and that's when I joined the Olympia camera team.
Right.
And that was thanks to Ben Weeder, who spoke to the people in charge of the recording at the Olympia. I made it clear to Ben that I would like to be in the camera team, and he arranged it, and I've been with the team and filming at the Olympia every year since 1999.
Yeah. So what do you do at the Olympia exactly? So what is your role?
Okay, well, my role is twofold. In the last 2 years, I've been recording the new contest, the Amateur Olympia, and that this year was run over 2 days. Day 1 for the women and day 2 was the men's competition. That was on the Wednesday and Thursday preceding the Mr. Olympia. So it's my job. I go to the theatre called the showroom, and I do a complete setup and check on the day before, feeding the big screens on each side of the stage, and then when the contest starts, and it started at 8 a.m, so I was there at 6 o'clock on the first contest day, setting up and getting everything ready, and then I record everything, and that's made available to the competitors or competitors' families or whoever wants to have a video file. So I'm recording that, and I'm also recording the history of this event for the Olympia, for their archives. So I give them a copy, edited copy of everything I shoot. So that's the first role. The second role is to do with the professional prejudging held at the expo stage, and that's on Friday and Saturday, and they split out the judging over the 2 days. It's all the women's classes. Like they start off with fitness, figure and bikini, and that's about it, and they rotate through the classes, and then they have classic physique prejudging, men's physique, women's physique.
So that's all done on the expo stage?
That's all done there. They used to do, a long time ago, they used to do the 212 prejudging there, but the 212 and the men's prejudging are both done at the arena for the big crowds to see in the arena. So that's the expo stage, 2 days, and that goes from approximately, it starts at about 10 in the morning, and then I have to, whatever's on that stage, I'm presenting up to the big screens on each side of the stage, and that goes through till approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Friday and Saturday. And then at night of the pro nights, that's Friday and Saturday, I shoot the pump room backstage, and I'm recording that, and again that's primarily for the Olympia archives, and that's where you get up close and you really see how good people are. You see who's in the best shape, and it's the best place to be if you're a super fan, because behind the scenes is always interesting and exciting, and I just love it back there.
It sounds like a big undertaking. Do you have a team? Like, is there, or do you do all this by yourself?
This year my usual second cameraman was not able to be there. He was ill and wasn't recovered in time. I tried to find another assistant cameraman, but it wasn't possible to find a suitable person. So all I had this year was one helper, a gopher, and he was a former Mr. Australia. And he worked his butt off running around and helping me and doing the little things, and his name was Gennaro Ferrer.
Oh, yes,
He won his class in the Australia in 1989, and he's still in top shape. He's a personal trainer in New York, and so I went and shot some video with him in New York after the event. So I had one helper this year, so it was virtually the smallest team I've ever had. So yes, it was a very heavy workload of long days and quite a few hours setting up with the equipment and concentrating 100% for the whole time that there are bodies in front of you. So, yeah, it's quite a long, reasonably stressful time, but I still enjoy it. And then next year, my usual second photographer and cameraman assures me he will be back okay, because he had been suffering from DVT and a touch of pneumonia, so he wasn't well enough to come and assist me this year. And his name is Phil Carmen.
Yeah, excellent. You say they go to like the Olympia archives, so they're not really available for general purchase?
No, not at this time.
Yeah. They used to be, wasn't it, before that you could buy the Olympia pump room and things like that?
There were different rules going back a few years, and the rules have tightened up now that what I shoot is pretty much owned and controlled by the Olympia. So unfortunately I'm not free to just say, yes, you can contact me and buy the pump room. It used to be like that, but it's different these days, and maybe things will change and maybe things will loosen up, because everybody these days has a cell phone and they're shooting video, and although there are signs everywhere at the Olympia saying no unofficial video, I see lots and lots of video on places like Instagram and other places where people are just doing it. And it's so hard to police that I think that this is a policy that might have to be looked at in the future.
Yeah, well I hope so, because it would be great to see some of that footage out on just general, even just on social media, just see snippets especially. We don't see those guys in that element at all. It's usually just in the gym or on stage.
I must add though, there is a little bit of official pump room video you can see on NPC News Online. They put some out, but that's not like having a permanent record of the whole night in the pump room that's yours to archive and put it on the shelf with your video collection. So what they're giving you is a little bit of a glimpse as to what goes on in the pump room. So it's a different way of showing you the pump room as opposed to the old-fashioned way that I used to do, where I would try and show you every interesting minute of what took place in the pump room separately for men and women. Now you get a sort of a shortened version, but I must say that my friends at NPC News Online do a good job.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well let's go into the contest. Just before we go in and start analysing the actual divisions, before the show there was a little bit of talk going around social media that Mr. Olympia is losing its appeal, that the crowds aren't coming anymore, and they even sort of alluded that the People's Choice Award has been done to actually attract audiences back to the Olympia. How did you see that? Did you and in the last 20 years that you've been going, you know, are the crowds still strong? Is the appeal for the Mr. Olympia contest still there?
I think it's there, the same as ever. It could be partly because there are these extra classes that have come in over the last few years, like men's physique, and then there's women's physique and so on, and of course bikini's not been going all that many years, so the extra classes do bring in extra fans and extra friends and family. I don't think that there was any dropping off of the Olympia. The only thing I picked up on was, over the last couple of years, a number of people and fans have said to me they'd like to see somebody come up who's good enough to knock off Phil.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, and I wouldn't say that's a negative thing. That's just people liking to see change, or wanting to see Phil come in unbelievable condition, so that everybody could say, yes, he won that easily, he was a worthy winner, and not say, well, his midsection wasn't too good, but he still won. So there was a little bit of slight discontent that Phil has been winning, and the midsection the last couple of years just hasn't been quite there. So that's what I felt, that people were just looking for change and looking for a tighter direction in the best physique, which is the Mr. Universe and Mr. Olympia winner. That's what they want. Yep. They want to see somebody that epitomises what in their eyes is Mr. Olympia, not just the biggest guy who's got some condition, but a great guy with great condition.
Yep. And that was Shawn.
That's what Shawn brought to the stage this year.
Yep.
He's been around about the mark in the past. He's had seconds, or
That's
a
right.
second, and he's done well at the Arnold, so he's been knocking on the door. But this year, I mean, Shawn, he was simply stunning, and he brought a finer condition package, and that's what won it. He didn't win more body parts than Phil, as we said off camera. If you compare body part for body part.
That's right. A lot of people did that, and they analysed it pose by pose, and if you did it that way, well, Phil should have won, but it was the other way around.
Yeah, well, it's not judged actually by who's got the most number of best body parts. You might think it would be, some people would say it should be, but it's really judged on the total package and the total look, and that's not something that you can quantify as a body part.
That's right.
Because the total look that Phil had, I mean, it wasn't so good this year, but the total look that Shawn had with his conditioning was such that you would look at him and say, I feel he's going to be the winner this year. And I saw him in the pump room at the pre-judging, and he was flexing his abs in the mirror, and I thought, this is amazing. I haven't seen anything like this in the pump room for some time. Yeah. And then it turned out that when he went out, people started to say, I think Shawn can win it this year. And more people were saying it, and then they were saying it on Saturday night. So finally, I was backstage when it was announced that Shawn, Phil was second, Shawn was first, and there was cheering and elation by fans and all the people that work backstage, and that surprised me a bit, because I thought it would have been subdued. That, oh well, poor Phil, he didn't get that record 8th victory, but everybody was thrilled that Shawn had won. And I didn't see Shawn Roden as a person that has a huge number of fans, whereas Phil Heath does have a huge following. So it was a very interesting reaction I picked up on backstage, and I was told from people that were front of stage, that the reaction was similar in the audience, that there was great excitement and appreciation of of Shawn Rhoden's victory.
Yeah. What, you were backstage, obviously?
Yeah, I was backstage.
How was Phil when he came off stage?
This is not so good. He walked straight through the pump room to the change room area that he has reserved for him. His head was down. He was very disappointed. He looked emotional, and I can understand that.
That's fair enough.
That was his reaction, and nobody tried to bother him. They just let him go straight through, and he was having his little moment, you could say, of bodybuilding grief, because he must have been disappointed. He must have been hoping that he was good enough this year to get that title and to get the record. So he went straight through, and I didn't see him again, and I understand that he didn't do any post-Olympia interviews backstage. He did some, I believe, after the event, but I don't think he did any there in the pump room area.
No, he didn't.
As happens.
Even Tony Doherty couldn't get an interview with him, and Tony's the NPC News online official interviewer.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, even Tony said he couldn't get and he could understand sort of as well.
And that brings up another point. When Phil got second on stage, it was a little bit difficult. You felt that perhaps a little bit more could have been made of Phil.
I thought it was a little bit disrespectful. I thought the way they announced the Olympia, they don't announce second place, they announce the winner.
Yes.
And it's like the second place person then gets pushed aside because the winner gets the adulation and everything else. And that's what happened. And Phil was pushed aside, and he just stood there waiting for his medal and his fake check and a couple of photos, and you could see he didn't want to be there. But I thought they could have gone a little bit more over, give him a little bit more of stage time and appreciate. He's 7-time Mr. Olympia, and I felt for him.
Well, I wanted to take your mind back to when the role was reversed. Jay Cutler lost to Phil, so we're going back, say, about 7 years. And on that night, when Jay Cutler lost and he was the runner-up, do you remember he did a fantastic interview right there on the spot, praising Phil and saying what a great champion he was going to be. He said some wonderful words, and he was able to do that. But that opportunity didn't come to Phil Heath to do what Jay Cutler had done when he lost the Olympia to
that's
Phil.
right.
I always remember the wonderful speech that Jay made and how well he presented himself, but that opportunity didn't seem to happen with Phil this year when he got runner-up.
No.
So that's something that I don't know whether it could have been orchestrated or done better, but as you said, as a person watching it, it just felt a bit uncomfortable to you.
Yeah, that's right.
And he was sort of swept aside, and it was all Shawn. And Shawn deserved the adulation, but it would have been nice if we could have had just a few nice words from the old champion handing over to the new.
Yeah. Let's focus on Shawn a little bit. Do you think this is a change for bodybuilding now in terms of the judging guidelines? And Arnold's always talked about the tight waist and the aesthetic look. Do you think that this is now a message to all the other pro bodybuilders that this is what we're going to be looking for?
Most definitely, yes. This is the direction that certain people have been looking for and hoping for some time. In particular, Arnold has been calling for tighter physiques, tighter waist, better midsections, better conditioning, and getting away from the bulk and size at all costs syndrome, which has more or less been in vogue since Dorian Yates.
Yeah.
So we're going back over 20 odd years, but that's been the look. And compare that back to, say, the Lee Haney and the Frank Zane type of look. They're poles apart from what we've been having. Shawn Rhoden is a breath of fresh air. He's presenting a look that a lot of people want to see, and the judges have agreed with this new look, and I hope a new direction. We'll know in the coming pro contests if this direction is being maintained, with the judges rewarding tight conditioning.
Yeah. And
tight conditioning means a good midsection, whereas just mass with some conditioning is what we've been having in the past.
That's right. Based on that, do you think Phil has announced he did an interview with Dave Palumbo, and he announced on there that he's not competing next year, and that he's coming back in 2020. Do you think Phil can come back and regain his title, or do you think? To me, 2 years off, I think is too long. I think that's a mistake. And will he come back?
In his mind, he will come back. Will he actually come back? I'd have to say 50-50 in my opinion, because he'll be around about 40. Is that correct?
Yeah, Shawn's 44.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shawn's holding his age magnificently. Whether Phil will do the same, it's hard to say. So do I think Phil will come back? I tend to think he possibly will, to give one more crack at getting that 8th title. But I think he's going to find it even harder, because when Joe Cutler had a year off, Joe told me that he felt in hindsight it was a mistake, because it was so hard to get back after that time off. And I think it'll be exactly the same for Phil. So if you were to ask me, if Phil does come back, do I think he will win it? I rather don't think he will, to be honest. I think that he's had his time in the sun, and he's probably had his peak, and I would be very surprised if Phil could come back in 2 years' time and be better than everybody else and better than he was before, because people will expect that. I think it might be a bit too much, too far. But I do think he probably will have one last crack at it. Because if you remember, Ronnie was beaten, he came back, and he had another crack at Jay, and I think he got 4th.
4th, yeah.
And then that was it.
Yeah.
So he couldn't do it. And I remember Jay Cutler, when he had his torn bicep, he struggled that year. And of course, he didn't come out on top. I think that could have been the year when Phil took the title. I'm not sure now without checking my records. So unless you're doing it every year and maintaining a peak, I think it's very hard to come back and then be the top man again.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And you sort of, I sort of wish that maybe he wouldn't come back.
Yes.
Yeah, because the same thing happened with Ronnie. When he came back, it was a disappointment.
Yes.
It was exciting, but then it was disappointing.
That's exactly how I feel. I'd rather remember Ronnie as the great champion that he was, 8 times Mr. Olympia. I want to remember him on the night when he handed the title over to Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
And that's probably where it should have ended. But it didn't. He did that next time and got 4th. And so
that's
now
right.
You tend to remember Ronnie as 4th in his last contest, rather than either the winner or a close runner-up. So I hope that Phil doesn't make the same mistake, because if he did come back and got a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th, I feel that slightly detracts from everything that he's achieved prior to that time.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Everyone just remembers this show pretty well as the Shawn and Phil show, but there was other bodybuilders in there. We can quickly just go through now the divisions and your opinion on the other place getters. In 3rd place we had Rolly Winkler. Now he won the People's Choice Award.
Yes.
What do you think of the People's Choice Award?
I thought it was an interesting gimmick, because that's what I saw it as, but it was a fun new thing. It was just completely out of left field for me. I don't know where or why this idea came from. I think David Pecker had something to do with it, because he presented the belt to Rolly. So I'm not sure where the idea came from.
Do you know how they voted for it?
No, I'm not sure how it was done.
Yeah, I haven't been able to find out anything.
And I didn't see the voting, what would you call it, invitation either. So I don't know how it happened.
Right.
And it reminded me of pro boxing or pro wrestling, where the guy gets this huge belt. And it was a little bit like that. It was fun. That's the best I could say. It was.
I think Rolly treated it as fun. He came out in his tracksuit pants.
Yeah, he did. And then this is interesting. When he came backstage with the belt, he sat on a bench and he put it out in front of him, with the sign out to read and for the people that were backstage to photograph, because he was very proud of it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was nice. He didn't just sort of put it aside or stick it in his bag. He had it out on display.
Yeah, so it did mean something to him.
So I think it meant a lot to Rawley.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that he was very, very proud and honoured to win it, because in some ways he's a tiny bit of an outsider. in that he's not American. He's had to fight his way up through the amateur ranks. I seem to recall he won an amateur title at the Arnold some years ago, and so he's come up the hard way every year, getting a little bit better, and always getting a little bit bigger. But this year he had his midsection under really good control. And afterwards, a number of experts said to me that they wouldn't have been unhappy if Rawley had been second.
That's right, yeah, I've heard that too.
He wasn't that far away from Phil. When I say away from, I don't think in the judges' eyes they ever considered Rawley really as a possible second, because it was either Phil, either first or second.
Yeah.
But I think that next year, Rawley could be a really hot tip for a Mr. Olympia title, and no disrespect to Shawn Roden, but it's going to be hard for him to hold on to the title and to have the same condition again next year, whereas Rawley Winkler's a few years younger.
Yeah.
And it may be easier for him to come back next year even better than this year.
That's right.
So that would be my guess, is next year would be between Rawley and Shawn, and also William Bonac was just off a tiny bit. So he dropped down to fourth.
Yeah.
But his condition when he won the Arnold in Columbus in March, and I was there for that, his condition was just amazing.
Can Bonac win the Olympia?
If he comes in with the most incredible conditions, like he had at the Arnold in Columbus, I would say there's a chance. His height perhaps goes against him just a little bit, because when you're shorter, you've got to be absolutely incredible to win, to take out the Olympia title. I mean, most of the guys in recent years, as in like Ronnie, Jay, Phil, and now Shawn Roden, they're not short guys.
No.
They're reasonably tall, and they're large.
Yeah.
So I'd say Bonac could possibly do it, but I'd have to say he would be an outsider. But I could see him getting a second.
Yeah. Surprise for a lot of people was Brandon Curry
Yes.
breaking into the top 6 in 5th place.
Yes, it was the best I think I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
Look, he was sharp, he was hard, he poses well. He's a person that a lot of people, you don't really notice him because he's been around, but he's never been like in the top 3. People have never said he's a contender, but he is somewhat of a contender now. If you're in the top few like he is, in the top 5, and he had great condition, great size. So he got it all together this year, and I thought he presented a wonderful package.
Yeah.
He could go higher, but I can't say at this stage I see him as a future winner of the Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a top contender for sure.
Yeah. And one of the big surprises / disappointments was Big Ramy. I can remember watching the prejudging, and he came out, and I can actually remember I said, "Oh my goodness," and it wasn't in a good way. It was like, even it's difficult on internet podcasts to see, but you could see that he was way off.
Yes, there was one simple explanation: too big. Being so huge, and I was observing him in the pump room, and his waist, from front to back, was very, very large. He could pull it in a bit when he was on stage, but his midsection was huge, everything was huge, and I just felt that size had completely taken over his thinking and his training. And I feel that if he'd come in, let's talk pounds, say 25 pounds lighter, he could have been a contender, because last year he was runner-up.
That's right.
But this year he completely dropped out of contention. He was just too big to be able to control the body weight and to present it in a winning manner on stage.
Yeah. So you feel that he's got to drop the size game?
Yes, he's got to drop size and drop weight, and
which sounds funny in bodybuilding.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
They hate doing that. It's a mental block that you think you're going to be weaker if you're smaller, that the judges won't be so impressed. So it's a mental thing, I think, that he's got to get himself over with this size and weight thing.
Yeah.
Now, whether he comes in next year 25 pounds lighter, or that's only my opinion, is hard to say, and it's probably not going to happen. He might come in 10 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
And I don't think that will necessarily be enough for him to take the title.
He's got to re-qualify though now too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And that won't be enjoyable because guys that have been in the top group hate having to re-qualify. And if you look at Phil, for example, over the last years, he hasn't done an Arnold Classic.
No.
And I was talking to Bob Lorimer this year, and he was saying that he would love for Phil to do the Arnold Classic.
Yeah, I'm sure he would.
but it hasn't been happening, and it probably won't happen. I think Phil might have done one some years ago and didn't win. I've got a vague idea Phil did an Arnold Classic in the year that Kai Green won, but I didn't check that fact. But do you have any memory of that?
No, I don't. I can't recall. I know he did an Arnold before the Olympia, but
well, that might be that far
that
back.
might be, yeah,
It
that's
could
right.
be. Going back to Olympia winners and Arnolds, Jay Cutler won 3 Arnolds.
Yeah.
And in 2001, I was there when Ronnie Coleman won the Arnold, and then later, 6 months later, he won the Olympia. So that sort of double is not being attempted anymore.
Yeah.
That's gone.
That's right.
And it's unfortunate in a way, because I'd like to see the top bodybuilders in the top contests. And they are the two. The Olympia and the Arnold are the best 2 contests in the world. So they deserve to have the best field. It's like in tennis, you have the Grand Prix in tennis. The top players, they do the top events. I know it's harder to compete in bodybuilding probably than in the Grand Prix of tennis, but I just wish that would happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be actually a good idea. You could have 4 contests. Maybe if they did 2 at the beginning of the year, in the lead up to the Arnold Classic, or one sort of the Arnold Classic and another show, and then the Olympia and another show before that, and they could call that the Grand Slam or something.
They could.
Yeah.
But again, sadly, I don't see it happening. But if you go back for over 10 years, you had people like Flex Wheeler and Kevin Levrone. They would do 6 or 8 Grand Prix a year, and of course, including the Olympia.
Yeah.
Now, that sort of thing does not happen these days.
There was one year that when one of the first Olympias that Ronnie won, he did the European Grand Prix as well, didn't he? And he cleaned up all of that as well.
Yes, he did. Yes. In fact, I think that was the year I was there, because I was filming Ronnie all over the world, winning Grand Prix and then winning at the Olympia. Like I remember he won the Dutch Grand Prix. There would have been the English Grand Prix. And then in 1998, Ronnie won the Finnish Grand Prix, which was held in Helsinki. So I remember all of those very clearly, but now you don't get that happening anymore, and there are not so many Grand Prix being held all around the world. Those days have sadly gone. We've just got our Arnolds all around the world. We've got different countries, and then I'm really struggling to think of many other Grand Prix that are held every year.
That's right.
So that's the thing of the past.
Yeah. In 7th place, we had Dexter Jackson. Is that the end of Dexter?
You'd be a brave man to say that's the end of Dexter, but it's the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of age finally catching up with him. He didn't look bad, just the others all looked a little bit better.
Yeah.
I had a good look at Dexter. He had reasonably good condition, but I have seen him a little bit sharper. He's got great balance, good size, so it was hard to pinpoint just one particular thing why Dexter slipped a bit this year. But I think it is the beginning of the downhill part for Dexter now. And what is he, about 46?
Something like that, yeah.
Yes.
No, he's older than that, because I think he's turning 50 this year. So I think he's 49.
Well, he's absolutely incredible, total respect, but you just can't be in the top 3 or so forever. And this is now, I think it's going to be the gradual slip down the placings for Dexter. I don't have any objection to him going on competing, because he's still very competitive. He looks great. He's said that he loves doing it, and he's not just driven by, well, I won't compete if I don't win. So he's a unique individual, and total respect to Dexter.
Yeah, I agree. He goes down as one of the greatest pro bodybuilders ever.
Without doubt.
Yeah. In eighth place we had Nathan Diasha. A lot of people were talking Nathan as a top 6 contender, but I thought that he's still way off top 6.
Yes, he wasn't sharp enough, and also his size wasn't quite there. He was just a little bit down this year, I thought. He didn't stand out. That's the best way to describe him. I mean, he looked good, he looked okay, but he didn't really stand out.
Yeah.
And then that's why he ended up being placed in 8th place, just one place ahead of Cedric McMillan, who was definitely off his game this year. He just wasn't sharp, and he wasn't looking positive. I saw him backstage at the pre-judging, and he looked down, and he probably knew that he wasn't quite at his peak, and that's the judges also agreed that he just wasn't at his peak this year. Don't know why, just one of those
He's
things.
one of these guys that he can come into an Arnold and look phenomenal and win the Arnold Classic and push competitors. Well, he's beaten Kai Green, but every Olympia it's a little bit disappointing.
Yes, I think Cedric, he finds it hard to peak, and then when he does peak, he's really on.
Yeah.
But this year he was, well, I won't say he was off, but he wasn't anywhere near his best, and that's why he had to settle for 9th place, and he just edged out Steve Kuklo, and Steve just looked a little bit flat this year. Again, when he tensed, he had to tense really hard to get things to pop out, but when he stood there relaxed or semi-relaxed, Steve looked fairly average this year compared with how he has looked in the past. So I think Steve would have been disappointed at getting 10th, but on the other hand, that was about his correct position for this year.
Yeah. Out of the rest of the people in the field, any comments on any of the others?
Only Sergio Oliver Jr.
Yeah.
Making his Olympia debut. Sergio, he has great potential. He had certain aspects of his physique that reminded me of his dad. And in the pump room we chatted, and he said, you were the last person to film and photograph my dad. So that was really nice, and we chatted about that. And but Sergio, he has good calves. He has great forearms. He has a good V shape. And I feel that what he needs to do is just get more muscle maturity, and particularly in his back, just more size, and of course more experience competing at the top level. He's in his 30s, so
is he in his 30s already?
Yes, he's in his 30s. So it has taken him a little while to get there, but he's made the father-son, probably the first father-son in the Olympia, to be on that stage. So we had a short chat, and it was really good to catch up with him. It's the first time I'd met him, and we briefly reminisced about his father and how I'd filmed him all these years ago, and Sergio and I are going to keep in touch, and one day it would be nice to have him in front of my camera like I did with his dad back in the 70s.
Yeah. He was here in Australia 2 weeks ago, did you know that? He was at the IFBB Pro League Nationals.
No, I didn't know he was coming out for that.
No, and I don't think anybody knew. I don't know if he was... There was no mention that he was being brought out for the contest. He apparently just made an appearance. So I don't know if he was in Australia for some other reason, but he didn't guest pose or anything. But Tony had a brief interview with him on stage.
I know that he got on well with Tony, so
Yeah.
I'd say it was a private invitation to come out.
Maybe, yeah.
So that was interesting. I wish I'd been there to see that.
Before we move on to the 212s, we'll wrap up the Open. And how do you see next year? Do you think Shawn can win, or is this now an Open Olympia pretty well for the top 6 to make a move and challenge it? You know, will we have a repeat winner, or are we going to have for a long time another new winner?
Well, first of all, I think it'll be very hard for Shawn to defend and hold on to his title.
Why is that?
If you look at the recent past history of Shawn, he's not been able to bring this quality of physique and condition to the Olympia before. Now, was it a one-off this year, or can he do it again next year and the year after?
I'll
the
quickly,
question.
I'll just stop you there. Chris Aceto is his coach, and someone asked Chris that same question. Now, Chris had excuses, saying that a couple of years ago, when Phil Shawn was off, he had a broken jaw.
Yes.
And the one before that, he was coming off a self-admitted alcohol problem. And all of that is now under control. Everything's under control, and that he'll be able to win the Olympia for as many times as he wants.
Well, I'd agree with part of that.
Mm.
He has the ability, the physique and the drive to do it now that he's got a lot of things fixed up in his life.
Yeah.
And he's got his beautiful young daughter, and his life seems to be right on track. So I would say that he's 50-50 to win next year, but I wouldn't say he's a hot favourite.
Yep.
I mean, he's going to be a year older. What will he be, 44?
45.
Or
yeah.
45 next year. And I see a lot of pressure coming from Rawley Winkler next year. And then there's a possibility that Kai Green will come back. Although other people I've spoken to who know Kai tell me that he's had a few ups and downs with his health. And whether he would be wanting to do all the things he would have to do to come back and win next year is a personal matter for Kai. So I don't know whether he will be back, but he could possibly win it if he came back in the condition he was in a couple of years ago, when he had those runner-up positions to Phil. So I would say Shawn 50-50 for next year to be the winner, but time will tell.
Time will tell. So yeah, your pick, Rowley?
Probably for the person that's still improving each year would have to be, I'd say, Rawley Winkler.
Yeah.
And a faint possibility that Big Ramy, if he comes back tight and lean next year, he could possibly jump straight into the top position. I wouldn't rule that out as a possibility, but he's got to be prepared to sacrifice size to come back with condition.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. I think. Rowley will be right up there, and a dark horse with Ramy if he can pull everything together. He's announced that he's left the Kuwaiti team and gone back home to Egypt. So
yes, I heard that too. Because of the other top contenders, I'm not sure William Bonac can just jump up and take it next year, but I still feel William will be in the top 2 or 3 probably next year. And if you look down past there, there's no obvious contender that's jumping out at me.
Based on that top 10 and the whole Olympia lineup, Josh Lenarowitz is planning on coming back. If he qualifies for the Olympia, how do you see Josh fitting into that lineup?
Well, I've said all along he's good enough to be a top 6 contender.
Yeah.
In his very best condition. Whether he can jump straight into the top 6 is a huge ask, but I certainly see Josh, without any doubt, top 10 easily. But I felt that in his first Olympia he looked the best, and I was hoping he was going to, place really high up. Being a new boy, I felt that he was placed a fraction lower than he deserved in his first Olympia. Yeah. So he could come in and make a good mark. But I couldn't see him jumping in and winning it after not having been in it for a bit. But he could be and should be a top 6 competitor.
Yeah. No, well, definitely it's going to be another exciting Olympia.
It could be. As a lot of people are saying, it's wide open.
That's right.
And it is wide open when you've got a champion who's only won it once.
That's right.
So, as I say, anything could happen next year. And it's going to be hard to imagine Shawn winning it year after year, partly because of his age. Because when Phil started his run, he was considerably younger than Shawn.
That's right. Yeah, and same with Ronnie.
And
Ronnie towards the end was starting to show his age.
He was. That's when Joe Cutler finally got on top.
Yeah. Right, moving on to the 212, we'll quickly go through the top 6 or so in the 212. Flex Lewis was obviously the standout winner, but I watched that one quite intently, and I didn't have Derek Lunsford anywhere near the top 4, and he came second.
I agree.
And this Kamal El Gagni looked sensational.
Yes.
And I thought straight away that this is between James and Kamal.
That's what I thought.
And I think I had Derek in my mind somewhere fifth or sixth, and it was a huge shock to me that he came second.
Well, I said exactly the same thing in my report.
Yeah.
I was staggered when Kamal was announced third.
Mm.
Because I've analysed between the two of them, Derek Lunsford and Kamal, and I looked at both of them closely in the pump room. And Derek Lunsford is definitely, he was much younger, but that shouldn't be anything to do with it. He was good when he was fully flexed, but in the pump room I thought he looked as though he was still carrying a little bit of fluid.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that when you compared them pose for pose, okay, Derek had a slightly better front double biceps and shoulder width, but that was about the only thing I thought that he had superior to Kamal. And Kamal had condition, shape, posing, better legs, better abs, and his back was well detailed. So if you go through all of those things, I felt that Lunsford got his second partly because he was a broad-shouldered American who a lot of people were saying was the future of the 212 class.
Mm.
But that shouldn't have anything to do with it. It's who's the best on the day, on the night. And I think that Kamal was a little bit unlucky getting his third place. And I don't say I think, I know he was unlucky.
Yeah.
Because he, in my eye, as a judge and a person having seen bodybuilding for over 50 years, he was clearly deserving of the second place.
Mm.
But it didn't come his way. And Derek Lunsford, who you said didn't really stand out for you, he was given second place.
That's right.
And if you look at the judging sheets, it wasn't that Kamal was third by a point. He was, several points behind Derek. So the judges didn't quite see it as close as I saw it. And I've said to Kamal, I hope you'll come back next year and prove them wrong. And he said, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
So he's aiming to come back. But Kamal's also in his mid-40s.
That's right, yeah.
So it's hard, but I'm not saying he can't do it, because I was expecting him to be a good runner-up to Flex Lewis.
Mm.
Both seeing at the pre-judging and prior to the announcements. And Kamal's posing too was outstanding. Did you see that on the webcast?
No, I missed that one, yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty good. And Kamal has won virtually every title that he could possibly win. He's had Never Universes and Never Worlds and IFBB titles, and his great experience and muscle maturity really shows.
Yeah.
But it wasn't to be this time.
No, that's right. Ahmad Askanani, he dropped back a couple of spots into fourth.
Yes.
And Jose Raymond in fifth in his last Olympia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Jose, again, perhaps a tiny bit heavy, but he just didn't have the shape and the look to compete with the top three. And Ashkanani, I've seen him look better. He wasn't quite as sharp as I've seen him in the past, so he was most definitely for fourth place. Well, I've talked about Derek Lunsford. Derek has great potential, but I didn't think he was quite there this year to be second. And David Henry always looks good.
Yeah.
But the judges always seem to place him down a bit, in my opinion. And David Henry came in at sixth place. Maybe they always say his legs are a bit light, but his upper body is absolutely outstanding.
That's right.
And he's a great physique. And I remember one year David Henry was runner-up to Lee Priest in the Ironman.
Yeah.
And it just happened that two shorter guys were the top two guys in the Ironman. But I remember that year it was quite close, and I thought, when I was waiting for the announcement, gee, I hope Lee's got this, because it's very close between him and David Henry. So David's been around.
He's been around for a long time.
As a really top competitor for a long time, and he always comes in condition.
That's right.
Good condition.
Yeah. I mean, we skipped over James Lewis because he was just the clear outstanding winner.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about his move to retire from the 212?
Good move.
Yeah?
Very good move. I think that he should have left the 212 a year or so ago and gone in with the big boys.
Yeah.
If you look back at the past, there have been plenty of shorter bodybuilders who've done well in the open class. People from Lee Priest, Rich Gaspari's not that tall, McAwee, Benaziza. There's been a lot of guys that are of similar stature to Flex Lewis, and I feel that he's been so outstanding for so long in this class. It's definitely time for him to move up. Now he has said, or his coaches have said, that he's going to allow 2 years to get ready for the open class. You've heard that as well?
Yeah, and that my question was going to be about that. Do you think he might now come back earlier because of what happened at the open division in the Olympia?
Well, easy answer, yes, and I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope he competes next year. I think it would be a mistake for him to stand out for 2 years, because it's not as if he's getting ready to come back and to try and knock off Phil Heath. He's coming back to an open field next year if he so chooses.
As a 212 Olympia winner, does that give him the same qualification that he's qualified for the Olympia for life?
That's a Robin Cheng question. I can't answer that.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That
well,
yeah. Or does that only apply to the open division?
I suspect only the open division.
So
this question's never come up before.
No.
So no, this is a new question for the authorities to decide on.
That's right.
If he says, I want to compete next year in the open, do I have to compete somewhere to qualify, or can I just go straight in? That's a very good question. If I had any say in it, I'd say you're straight in. Look at your record.
That's right.
All of these victories, yes, you're in. And then I would further go on and predict that, in my opinion, in the condition he showed this year, and in the same field as I see here, I could see him coming in at 3rd or 4th in the Olympia.
Really?
I could see him matching poses with Rory Winkler. I see him possibly being better than William Bonac was this year. Now Bonac got 4th. So taking this year and inserting Flex Lewis into that field, that's where I see he could place. Now next year, Flex could be even a bit better.
Well, yeah, he always has maintained that he struggles to make weight. Really struggles to get to 212, and his ideal weight is 225 to 230, which is in the Bonac territory.
Yes, that would mean that he would be a real contender. I can't really see him coming in next year and winning the Olympia.
Yeah.
That might be a step too far, but I can see Flex Lewis, if he does go in it next year, I could see him very easily top 3, at worst top 4. That's where I would see it right now. But his camp is not saying he's going to compete next year, but I hope they will reassess everything, because with just some slight improvement or gradual improvement that he does every year, he could be a real contender next year in the Mr. Olympia.
That's excellent. That's because that's actually goes against the grain of what some of the experts have been saying, that he, a lot of people have said that he'll struggle to make the top 6, but I've always thought that he's got the potential.
People that have said that don't really know how good he is. I've seen him up close for years. I filmed Flex Lewis when he won the NABBA Junior Universe. I've talked about this before in another interview segment. And when I saw him then, when he walked on the stage that night in round 1, I said, this guy is an absolute champion. I thought to myself, well, he's number 1, he's 1. Now who's going to be 2nd, 3rd and 4th? That's how much he was in front of the rest. And he's just kept on going up and improving each year since that time when he won that Junior Universe. And so I see him still with more improvement ahead of him. And if he takes the shackles off his weight, having to hold it down to the 212, like you said, his better weight, his best weight is going to be a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
And he's going to be simply incredible.
That's right.
And he is now, but he'll be more incredible next year if he competes.
Yeah.
And I hope he doesn't stand out for 2 years.
All right. So the 212 is now also vacant.
Yes.
Who do you see taking that?
Well, it's
just based on this year's Olympia.
Well, it's easy to say that Kamal will take it next year, but I think what helps Derek Lunsford is that he has a huge fan base in USA, and it always helps to be a contender in your own country. I don't want to say any more than that. And Kamal, he's very much a sort of an outsider and was an unknown person. I mean, he lives in England where he's run a gym for years. He's born in Libya. Um, these are not the things that are going to help make him a big favourite.
Yeah.
In USA or with the judges, he's got to fight against being a bit of an outsider and a bit of an unknown. So his physique has to be that much better in order for him to get the placing that he deserves. It was a bit like in the very early days of Dorian Yates. He had to fight to get recognised and to be known. It was easier for him than it would be for Kamal.
Yeah.
So I see that Kamal could be the favourite for next year. In my opinion, should be the favourite. But I think Derek Lunsford, if he puts on good improvement, it's going to definitely be between those two next year in the 212. And the experts are talking about Derek Lunsford as starting a run of victories. So certain people are talking him up already.
Yeah. Anybody else you see as
Not really.
possible?
I don't see Ashkanani breaking into the top two next year. He's good.
Yeah.
And Jose Raymond and David Henry, well, they're not going to be contenders to win next year, in my opinion. I'm not sure about Jose Raymond. I think I heard he's going to have some operations.
Yeah, I think he has called it quits.
Yeah, that's it for him.
Yeah.
And as for David Henry, well, he'll always be a top contender, assuming he keeps going. I don't see anybody else. There is talk of a guy in Iran
Yes.
that can't get a visa to come and compete.
Yeah.
I don't see the political situation changing for him next year, do you?
No. And
So-
I as long as Trump is in power, it's not going to change.
He's not going to be
Yeah.
there. So that guy's out of the question.
Yeah.
So that pretty much wraps up the 212s, because the others, there's a lot of just good bodybuilders there, but there's nobody there that I see other than
Hardy Schupan is the guy we were talking about
that's
in
the guy,
Iran.
Shupan,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about how he could come in and be first or second
That's right.
in the 212, but I've never actually seen him.
He looks phenomenal. Flex did beat him last year after the Olympia in the Korea pro show.
Right.
Hardy came second to Flex.
So he's obviously very, very good.
Yes.
And of the others down there that didn't place highly, there's Charles Dixon and Sammy Al-Haddad. They're two names that I know well, but they placed well down in the 212s this year.
Yeah. The classic physique is really growing, and that seems to be actually getting even sometimes more airplay than the 212s. Like it's a very growing division. And Breon Ansley and Chris Bumstead, it was pretty well a two-man race.
It was.
And they emulated last year's placings. How did you see that one?
I saw it as pretty close, and I've looked at the judging sheets, and there was 1 point difference between them on the judges' scores, and I also saw it very close on the stage. Chris Bumstead, he's reasonably tall, has a great physique, great shape, good taper, and Breon Ansley, he's like a mini version of Phil Heath. He's got great arms, good shape, good narrow waist, good sweep, taper, and he wasn't quite as sharp as he was when he won the Arnold Classic Physique this year in March.
Yeah.
He looked absolutely phenomenal when he won that. So that's why the gap narrowed between him and Chris Bumstead. And of course I heard that Chris Bumstead had been ill just before the contest,
that's
so
right.
he wasn't quite at his peak. So I wouldn't mind saying that if Chris Bumstead had been at his absolute peak, health-wise, he could have knocked Breon off and taken that title.
Yeah.
Because Breon was just down a touch from the best I've seen, and Chris Bumstead was also down a touch because of his health issues. So I knew it was going to be very close just with my eye looking at the two of them and thinking who's going to win this, and my feeling was, well, Breon is the champion. The next guy isn't 5 or 10% better than him, so it's going to stay. Breon will be the champion and Chris Bumstead will probably be runner-up, and that's exactly what happened.
So are these two really light years ahead of the others?
Small light years ahead.
Yeah.
Because when you come down to George Peterson and then the next guy, who I must admit I wasn't aware of, they were, well, George Peterson was good, very, very good. But then the next ones, or Arash is great.
Yes.
But Arash, I feel that he is on the limit of his genetics, his shape and his physique. He looked very, very good. But when he stood next to Breon Ansley, Breon just had certain things in his genetics that I thought to myself, Arash is not going to be able to beat this guy easily. There's just a difference between their two looks.
Yeah.
And Arash just is good, very, very good. But Breon is sort of a freak with his physique. As I said, he's like a mini Mr. Olympia because he's just got a little bit of everything perfectly tied together with a great midsection as well. Good posing, good personality, all the things that makes for a champion.
Yeah.
So Arash is good and has placed higher. George Peterson, as I said, was a surprise to me. He was very good. Not sure what his potential is for the future. Regan Grimes was the one that I was looking for. Now he's a pro bodybuilder.
That's right.
And he has come down in his parameters that he needed to qualify for classic physique. And I felt that he could have been, in fact I predicted he would be in my top 3.
Yeah.
But he didn't make it. He wasn't sharp enough. He has got good shape, but he just didn't stand out enough to be in the top 3 or 4. He came in at 8th, and then there was a guy, number 11, called David Hoffman from Germany, and he was a very striking physique. That's a name I would look for in the future, David Hoffman.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with him, but he did place pretty low at 11th place. So that's just about it for the classic. Oh, Danny Hester. He dropped to 12th.
He was top 5 last year.
Yes, and he's been a champion. Didn't he win the first one?
He won the first one. Yes.
I think it was a little bit of combination of age. He just didn't stand out with sharp condition this year, and he dropped considerably to go down to 12th place. So that was pretty much about it. Danny Hester surprised me that they placed him as low as that, because I still felt that he was well within, say, the top 8. But other people just got in front of him who were just perhaps a little bit sharper. So Danny Hester, maybe you could say age is starting to count a little bit against him. He's been competing for a very long time. I'm not sure how long, but I remember Danny Hester competing as a young bodybuilder.
That's right. I can remember him
a long time ago. So
Yeah.
that wraps up pretty much the classic. By the way, the classic physique class, something that we haven't touched on. I found that pre-Olympia there was more talk about the classic physique than anything else, because it's the area where people are really interested, because all the physiques have to be tight to be in the classic physique. You can't be huge. It's not like Mr. Olympia. You've got to have a certain look to be in classic physique, and that look generally means great midsection, and it's a very open class where people feel that although Breon was a popular favourite, it's a class that people feel is pretty open.
Yeah.
Somebody can just come out of nowhere and win this class if you fit the criteria of classic physique.
That's right.
So it's very much talked about as the growth, interest, excitement class of the future.
It's still very much so in its infancy, and I think there's still a lot of potential good bodybuilders to make their debut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It's the growth area of the Olympia, not just in numbers, but in its excitement and popularity.
Yeah. Men's physique, it's not something that I follow a lot, even though it's one of the biggest growing divisions in world bodybuilding in any federation.
Yeah.
But again, this is now a division that is open since the current the reigning Olympia dropped back into 4th place.
Yes. Well, that was very fair.
Yeah.
I made predictions before the Olympia, and this was the one class that I got my prediction correct, so I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
I felt that Brandon Hendrickson was going to win it, looking at last year's field and looking at this year's field, and I knew that Jeremy had issues. I think it was a torn pec or something had been torn, and I knew that that would affect his training to the point that I didn't expect he was going to come in and look as good as he had in the last few years when he's won this title. So I had a feeling that Brandon Hendrickson, who was my favourite from last year, who I felt was very close to Breon, would come up and take it, and that's exactly what happened. And then I felt that the guy from England, Ryan Terry, would be probably second, but he got third. Ryan Terry's got the most amazing abs and midsection torso development that you could ever imagine. He's just stunningly good. But when you compared him with the first and second place guys, they were just slightly bigger, slightly wider in the shoulders.
Yeah.
But midsection wise, anybody listening to this or watching this bit of video, check out Ryan Terry. He's just got what you would call a beautiful physique. When we're talking upper body physiques in men's physique class, because that's what it is. And I think he might have been a runner-up last year. I know he's been very high, highly placed in the past. So Ryan Terry, look out for him. And Jerry Buendia, who got fourth this year, was a very graceful winner, champion, handing over to the new winner. And I was very pleased to see the way he behaved as the outgoing champion. He was very respectful to the new winner, and I thought he behaved magnificently as the outgoing champion, and a man of huge quality, Jerry Buendia.
Yeah.
Fourth this year.
Oh, right, because he doesn't have a very good social media reputation.
He's known for being fiery.
Yeah.
He says what he thinks. He has people that like him and hate him.
Yeah.
Because
I think Jeremy's problem on social media is that he will react to too much to the trolls who now know to bait him, and they know they'll get a reaction out of him.
Yes, unfortunately, he finds it hard to ignore the people that should be ignored.
That's right.
And just get on with his business. But that had no connection with his placing this year, and he has been a great champion of this class, but this year he just didn't bring the condition that he's had in the past because of his injury, I'm sure, and I'm not sure whether he will continue in this class or whether he might look at classic physique. Yeah. People have said about him doing classic. Have you heard that as well?
Yeah, there has been a little bit talk about that. Yeah.
And then Andre Ferguson, who was in fifth, he won the men's physique of the Arnold in Columbus this year.
Oh, right, yeah.
But he didn't look quite as good as he looked then, and this was a very tight field that in the top five, I thought there wasn't that much between any of them, but I thought that Brandon Hendrickson was definitely the worthy winner because of his total package, his wide shoulders, and his just fantastic upper body.
Yeah. Rounding out the men's divisions, this is one thing a lot of people most probably don't even know happened, but there was a Pro League wheelchair division this year.
Yes, so this was held on the expo stage.
Yeah.
From memory, it was on the Saturday afternoon as the last thing on the expo stage. In fact, it was Saturday. And they had competitors from around the world. This wasn't just an American contest.
No, I can see there's Sweden, there's Italy,
India.
India.
Yes, I've in my results I've listed the country for everybody because I like to give due respect to people that get out of their comfort zone and come from all over the world, stuck in a wheelchair. I admire these people, and that's why I want to publicise them as much as I can. They deserve it. So it was from all over the world, and it was an international contest, not just an American thing.
Yeah.
So the guy from India, who I heard was a stuntman and actor, and I don't know whether he hurt his back in a stunt or whether it happened some other way, but he was outstanding and he won Best Presentation or Best Poser Award, and his name was Anand Arnold.
Yeah.
So he was a new face I hadn't seen before, because I've seen wheelchair in Columbus at the Arnold. And a lot of these guys I've seen before in the Arnold Classic wheelchair event, where Harold Kelly is a real champion. He's a bit of a Phil Heath of wheelchair bodybuilding.
Okay.
And he won it in Columbus, and he had won it, I think, the year before, and maybe before that. So Harold Kelly is very hard to beat. He has a fantastic upper body, great double biceps, poses well, and this is a class whereby before each man presented himself on stage, the wheelchair MC, his name's Nick Scott, he said why each guy was in a wheelchair.
Oh, right.
I thought that was really a nice personal insight into these guys.
Yeah.
What sort of thing had happened to them, what was wrong with their spine, which part of the spine had been damaged, destroyed, whatever. And he gave a very nice intro on each guy's personal story. And I thought it was a wonderful introduction. I don't know many people listening to this story know about it.
No.
But he went through this with each guy, talked about them, talked about their battles to be there, and then he said, and here they are. And
was he himself in a wheelchair?
Yes, he was.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's sort of the promoter, I suppose the president of the organisation, and he contacted me last week and said he's putting together a detailed website telling the stories of all of these guys that compete in pro wheelchair. And then at the end of the wheelchair, or during the event, I must mention this. They gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Jack McCann of Canada, and he's an old friend of mine, and Jack was instrumental in getting the wheelchair bodybuilding going as a sport.
Yeah.
And then of course it transitioned from the amateur level to the professional level, and Jack got his award for his services to the sport. And of course Jack's been in a wheelchair for a very long time. I think it was as a result of polio, and he's also a backstage IFBB official. And he works very hard at the Olympia behind the scenes and just helping people in general.
Yeah.
So that's a rundown on all the classes that involved the men at the Olympia this year.
Wow. Well, that was really interesting. I did not know about the wheelchair division until I saw it actually on Instagram on Chris Dim's page, because Chris, I think, was coaching one of the guys. And he put up a number of videos and images, and Chris, who was a very good pro bodybuilder and had a very tragic accident and ended up in a wheelchair, and he himself has announced that he's going to be competing in this division next year.
Yes, they brought Chris Dim on stage and they announced that, and they mentioned a little bit about his past professional career and how good he'd been, and what a threat he was probably going to be to these guys in the future in the wheelchair division.
That's right.
So that was good that they introduced him and said watch for him. I think they said next year. So yes, it was very well done, and it was good to see these guys having their moment. And they were judged just like normal bodybuilding. They did solo poses, then they did comparisons, and then they did posing routines.
Yeah.
And imagine doing a posing routine in a wheelchair. But there were some amazing routines where they were twisting and turning and spinning around and showing their upper body from every angle. And a lot of them were able to show quite good abs.
Yeah.
And that must be awfully hard to develop abs when you're stuck in a wheelchair.
That's right.
So it was an amazing class, and it's something that I think will grow and grow in the future.
Yeah. Excellent. Moving on to the women.
All right, so we just take a very quick break there, and then we'll do the women. And I'm just going to play a little bit of this back just to double check that we're all 100%. Do you want to...
All right, so in the women, I'm just having a look. You've given me the sheet of all the divisions. There was huge numbers in all of these divisions, and even in the men. Like the men's physique had massive numbers, and same with the classic physique. So the numbers are there.
Massive.
Yeah,
there were massive numbers in virtually every class. Or in the women, let's talk women in particular. The smallest class was probably the Fitness Olympia, where there were 15 competitors, and it's pretty hard to compete in Fitness Olympia because of the routine that they do. But in the figure, massive class, Bikini Olympia, huge class, and the women's physique, also a massive class of competitors. And then we'll talk about the new division, which was done at the expo stage, called the Pole Fitness Classic. We'll talk about that last. And even that had a field which was very, very powerful in quality, and that had 14 competitors. So if we start with the figure, I see from my other notes, Figure Olympia only started in the early 2000s.
Right.
We'll come to that a bit later. So that's been running for a few years, and I thought the favourite would be Candice Lewis-Carter, and she won in Columbus 6 months ago. But the winner in a very, very tight contest was Sydney Gillen. Similar looking physiques, both have wonderful V shapes that reminded me of Linda Murray. And then the third place winner, Nadia Wyatt, was a new physique in the figure class for me. I don't know a lot about her. And then there was Jessica Reyes Padilla, who was fourth, and she's also a top contender. But probably we'll talk about the top two because they were so close. And we've seen Candice Lewis-Carter in Australia, in Melbourne, at the Arnold Australia. So she's no new person to Australia, and I think Sydney Gillen has been to Australia a couple of times.
Yeah, I think she has too. Yeah.
So those two are just so close, and it comes down to the judge's personal preference on the night. This year it was Sydney. I would have given it to Candice, but they were so close. It's not a big deal between those two. And as I said, Candice won in Columbus 6 months ago. So a very, very hotly contested class. And if you look at the competitors down there, look at the countries that they come from. It's a truly international class. Canada, Brazil, Hungary, Poland, Italy, Paraguay, Mexico, Serbia, Puerto Rico, and of course USA. Now that's a fantastic spread.
That's right.
Of international competitors. So that's a very good thing for the future.
Yeah.
For future of figure bodybuilding and for the future of the sport in general. I don't like to see it where nearly every competitor is from USA, because it tells me the rest of the world is then not competitive yet in that particular division. But here, this is wide open to the whole world.
That's right. Yes. And we've now here, even in Australia, we've had a few girls that have gone and placed in the top 6. So it won't be long, I don't think, before we see an Australian back on the Olympia stage again.
That'd be good, because there wasn't one in any division this year.
No.
In the pro classes of the Olympia.
Yeah, I think the last, female was Amanda Doherty.
Yes.
And
there was another one in figure from about 2011. She was living at Mount Barker, I think.
Oh, right.
The name that just eludes me now. And she has an Australian husband, and I think she was born in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was a few years back. Now we'll move to Fitness Olympia.
This was another one that was a vacant division.
Yes.
Yeah, with Oksana retiring last year.
Oksana had retired. And so it was won again by the Arnold Classic champion, Whitney Jones. Whitney, she's an amazing person. She's got a couple of children, and most of the female Olympia winners, to my knowledge, don't have children.
Yeah.
But Whitney's a mother, and she has a routine that was long, complex, and might say almost overpowering. It had so many elements in it, and I think that was probably what put her in front of all the rest. She just gave so much in her routine, and the other aspects that judged on is their physique, and in comparison side by side, she of course did very well in that area.
Is that 50% routine and 50% physique? Or?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but I believe it's a high percentage.
Yeah,
routine.
I think the routine is a high percentage.
And
Yeah.
you probably didn't see her routine on the webcast.
No.
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 So I only saw her routine on the monitors because I was backstage at the time, but I do remember it was very complex, very detailed, and had a lot of elements in it. And I'm sure that's why she won. And then there was a girl called Ryle Graber from Canada and Miriam Capes. Miriam's been around for years and years in this division, and they took out second and third. And then of the other names, well, there's just a lot of really good names there, all roughly equal in standing, in my opinion. But here's the interesting one. Look at number 8. Jennifer Worth used to compete in the Olympia, I'm going to say, back in the early 2000s, and she made a comeback, and she took eighth place. So I'd imagine that she's probably getting around the age of 40, and she made a very good showing, because she wasn't able to place high, but 8th is still pretty good. And I would say she's been off the Olympia stage for well over 10 years, so that's worth a mention. The biggest surprise is the 11th place getter. Kate Errington won the Arnold Fitness Australia.
Oh, did she?
She's from England.
Yep.
Outstanding person, wonderful body, and great routine. Then in the Arnold Columbus, Kate Errington was second to Whitney Jones.
Yep.
So I've been talking to Kate by email about we're trying to work out what went wrong. So she went from first in her last contest in Melbourne to 11th in the Olympia, and that's a very significant drop. So the judges didn't like her, or they didn't like what she did, or they weren't happy with the package she brought to the stage. So we're going to try and analyse this. I've offered to give Kate my thoughts on it for what it's worth, because I've seen a lot of fitness competitors over the years, because to me it's very strange you would drop from a first to 11th from one contest to the next. That's just almost unheard of, 6 months apart.
Yep.
So something went wrong, and this is something that I'm going to investigate, because I'm just curious as to what went wrong. So that's Kate Errington. Watch out for her in the future at the Olympia, because if she can win an Arnold, I would say she could definitely win a Fitness Olympia.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest surprise to me, probably, of the Olympia. I was mildly surprised when Shawn Roden won, but he deserved to win when I saw him.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have thought that Kate was going to slip from first to 11th in consecutive contests. So that was a bit of a shock.
No, definitely.
Bikini. Okay, Bikini Olympia. Now the girl who won that, she's comes originally from Brazil. So I looked on the internet to find out the correct way to pronounce her surname, and it sounded like Teixeira. So it's Angelica Teixeira, and she won the bikini, and she's been winning a lot of bikini contests of late. And she's of course outstanding. You don't win Bikini Olympias and Arnold bikini divisions unless you're very, very good. But this is my thought. The top 5, in my opinion, were practically identical in quality.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
So how do you pick a winner?
That's right. It's every time I watch it, I sort of think, what are they judging them on? Because they are virtual clones, as far as I'm concerned.
They are. And I saw them backstage up close, and I agree. They were virtual clones. They all looked near perfect.
Yeah.
To our eyes, and then you had Ashley Keltwasser coming back, the past champion. She made a comeback and she took 5th place, and Ashley looked absolutely amazing, and she's won Arnold's and Olympias. So I'm just looking to see who was, just turning my page here to see who was 6th. Jennifer Ronzicki.
Jennifer, yeah.
She's also very good and has had runner-ups and top placings. And the girl from Argentina, Romina Basualdo, was also very impressive. So I'd say the top 7 were absolutely amazing. and no disrespect to all the others who were also very, very good, but the top 7, I don't know really how you can separate them. So it then comes down personal choice of the judges, and then it's the collective personal choice of the judges, and it went to Angelica. If I had been judging and I was only looking at them from backstage and in lineups and on the monitors, I probably would have gone first for Janet Leug, and she placed 3rd. Ashley Koutwasser I probably would have had a bit higher than 5th, and Angelica I definitely would have had, say, in my top 3.
Yeah.
But again, it's so subjective. It's so hard to compare one against the other when they all look so absolutely beautiful and perfect. So
Yeah,
that would be hard.
Would it boil down to, and not meaning to sound sexist or anything, but in the end your preference for even looks, you know,
Yes.
because the bodies are so identical and so perfect that
Yeah.
it comes down to that your own personal preference. You know what I'm trying to say, that if you like blondes versus brunettes or something, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
you're correct, because it does come down to your personal preference, but because that's not a judging criteria, we can't say too much about that.
No.
We know that human nature
That's
takes
right.
over, so it would come down to personal preference in the end, and that's something that you can't put into a set of criteria
No.
for judging the bikini class or any class when it comes down to very fine differences between people. It's nearly impossible to say, why is this person better than that person? It's more, I prefer this person to that person, so therefore I'm giving her first or second or third, and so on. So
That's
it's
right.
a very difficult class to analyse and to say why one person placed above the other. I just can't really do that.
Yeah. And I quickly, while you were talking there, I counted up, there was 33 girls in that bikini lineup.
I was busy at the pre-judge and behind the camera. There was 33 concentrations of individual compulsory poses.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. Then there was a lot of comparisons.
Yeah, there would have to be a lot of comparisons
There
to
were.
go through. Yeah.
There were a lot of comparisons. And I would say that everybody was very fairly compared.
Yeah.
Sandy Williamson controls the women's pre-judging, and Steve Weinberger the men's.
Yeah.
So yes, they were very, I thought they were very fairly dealt with and treated with great respect.
Yeah.
Women's physique?
In the women's physique, Shanique Grant, they're already talking about that she can be the next Phil Heath of the women's physique.
I agree.
Yeah. She's got it's just an incredible physique. It's just stunning. Yeah.
She's got cuts in her thighs.
Yeah.
She's got a tiny waist.
Up. She's got the most ridiculously tiny waist, and her shoulder development is just insane.
Yeah. I feel sorry for the other women going up against her who don't have these genetics. Because again, it's a bit like that comment I made about Flex Lewis. Right, Shanique's first. Who's going to be filling the other places?
Yeah, that's right.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
When I saw her on stage in Columbus, she won there, and she did the same here. I think she was probably more convincing in the Olympia than in Columbus. And in Columbus, I wasn't that familiar with her, and she had been out with, I believe she's had eye problems, detached retina or something like that. She's had problems, and people are saying now that she's got herself fully recovered, she's going to be a dominant force.
She was also stabbed last year.
I didn't know that.
No, in the hand. She got, it was like a mugging or something, and I think she put up her hand to defend herself.
Yeah.
And tendons were cut and everything like that. Yeah.
I knew she'd had personal
Because I think that was, because this is her first win, isn't it?
First Olympia, but she did win the Arnold this year.
Yeah, and I think last year she had to pull out because of that stabbing.
That's right, she had pulled out.
Yeah.
Because I remember Tony Doherty, when he interviewed her, talking about her personal difficulties that she'd been through and how she'd recovered.
That's right.
He didn't go into great detail, but he mentioned her eye problems.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise the stabbing. So she's going to be a real threat in this division because of her genetic shape and the fact that when you work hard with great genetics, you're going to be a great champion. So that was Shanique, and then Natalie Colho came in second, Jennifer Taylor third, and so on. I mentioned one girl called Heather Grace. She's a black American, poses beautifully, doesn't have the world's greatest genetics, but she's always up there in the top 6.
Yeah.
I've seen her in the past, and she's a person that I would say absolutely maximises what she's been given to produce a really great body, a great physique, and she does an excellent posing routine. Because with the women's physique, only the top competitors, I think it might have been the top 10, get to do their posing routine, but they all have to have one prepared. And one comment I'll make on the posing routines, on the stage there's a cross with a box where everybody's supposed to stand, because that's the best light, it's the best place, all the photographers are focused on that spot. And there was only one girl that I remember, and she did her routine near the back of the stage in the poor light, and I've spoken to one of her coaches since then for him to pass it on, because when you don't come forward to the box that's marked for posing and you hang back, that gives me the impression, if I'm a judge, that you're unsure of yourself.
That's right.
You're lacking confidence. You're not really comfortable to come right to the front and to show your routine. And the person I'm talking about, can't pronounce her name, but she's from Thailand, and it's something like Peng Prakai Tiangnok.
Yeah.
Gok. So that was the person that my advice to her would be to be more assertive in her posing presentation, because she's been in the top 10 the last 2 years, and each time she's not posed at the front of the stage where everybody else poses. That's just a very small point, but for anybody that's listening and wanting to get some tips, that would be the tip I would share. Be confident and stand in the box where the cross is, where everybody's supposed to pose, and where 95% of people do stand. And it's
That's
the
right.
same at your contest.
Exactly right.
I'd say nearly everybody stands there.
Yeah, I have the same white line
Yes.
with the centre cross.
That's what
But
they have.
we get the fitness and the bikini girls that will stop 2 metres before the cross and start doing their quarter turns, and I keep telling them that that's not the best light. That's why they reach the line there.
Well, it's the same here.
But you're right, the ones who are confident in themselves, they'll strut right up to the line.
Yeah, they stride up to it with confidence.
Yeah, that's right.
And that impresses the judges. So when you hang back, you're giving a signal, which is not a positive signal.
That's right.
So that's about all I've got to say. Just I'll mention one other competitor that I really like in this division. She placed 9th, Autumn Swanson. I don't know if you know that name.
No.
But she has won at the Arnold Amateur. And she had a great posing routine. She's tall, blonde, and I would have had her placed a little bit higher than 9th. Probably I would have had her around about 6th place. So that's a name to watch out for in the future if you're interested in women's physique.
And I noticed this is another really international field.
Yes.
Yeah, there's from everywhere.
Yes, you got Europe, Canada, South America,
Russia,
and Russia.
Yeah.
Czech Republic. So yes, it's well represented, this division. And as you know, this has taken over from the old Ms. Olympia, which was women's bodybuilding. That's gone now.
Yeah.
As it was getting too hard to control with its look. And this has still got a nice look. It's like a muscular figure type of physique. Not too big, but bigger than figure. And the other thing I like is the posing routine.
Yeah.
Because there's no posing in IFBB figure as there is in NABBA figure, for example. So this is the only class for the women where there's posing.
That's right.
As part of their total performance and their total structure of how they're judged. So that's good to see. So that's women's physique.
Going back on that quickly, we just hit back at women's figure. Do you think it would be better if they did some posing?
Absolutely. Because it's
I
almost
thought that I would love to see this girl do a front double bicep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have to do the whole gamut of maybe just a front and a rear double bicep or something. That's it, 2 poses or something, because I think it would be phenomenal rather than just them standing there doing quarter turns.
Well, in the figure, and and I'm sure this is correct, that there are comparison poses. There's no front double biceps, of course, but they do have an arms in the air pose, or loosely hands out, for example, as opposed to in like this. I'll probably, when I'm putting a bit of vision with this, I should probably show a couple of the compulsory poses when I put this part into my own documentary, just to show what the poses are.
Yeah.
But the double bicep pose, of course, is taboo in figure. And there is an equivalent pose in the women's physique, of course.
That's right.
But the figure, the reason why, in my opinion, there's no posing in IFBB figure is that it would make the contest run too long. I think that's what the officials fear. Let's not have any more posing. The contests are long enough as they are.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it never came in. But if you take NABBA figure bodybuilding, and they started the class years ago, it always had posing.
Yeah.
But only the top 6 pose at the evening shows at international levels.
Yeah.
But everybody poses at prejudging. So if you had 30, how many competitors did you see here?
33 figure girls.
Could you imagine 33 doing a posing routine at prejudging? It'd take forever. Even if they cut them down to 30 seconds.
That's right. Yeah.
So it just doesn't happen.
No. And the last female division, this is another new one, which I didn't even know was there, so there wasn't much publicity given to it.
No. Well, the Oksana Grishina Pole Fitness Classic at the Olympia was the official title, and that was held on that would be the Friday, September the 14th, on the expo stage. And the idea with this new division, well, it's a new division at the Olympia, put it that way. It's a combination of a fitness routine and a pole routine. So in other words, pole fitness means that the women do certain elements on the floor, and then they do elements on the pole, and they're judged for their total performance. And it's a most exciting new division to have, and I don't know how easy it would be to stage, because they had to put up the special poles. They had a couple of poles on the stage, and at the beginning of it, Oksana gave a brief routine, mostly a floor routine, just they wanted to introduce her to the crowd and to have her do something, because she was the promoter of the event. And then away it went. So they had 14 competitors, and they were from, well, various parts of the world, from Canada, El Salvador, France, South Korea, USA, and Russia. And the girl who won it, Tara Meyer, was a tall blonde from Canada, and she had an incredible routine, a fantastic body. They interviewed her, great personality.
Did they still judge the physique as in comparisons, or was it just routine?
I'll have to check the tape on that, because I've got it all recorded, and I'm not too sure. I think they did, but I can't remember comparisons, but there could have been. I'll have to check up on that and be a bit more accurate the next time when we talk about this new class. So Tara Meyer also won the Fans Award, and she won the Judges #1, and second was Sally Fox from USA, and so on. So it was a wonderfully interesting, exciting, fascinating new division held at the Olympia. And it was also a way to continue Oksana Grishina's connection with the Olympia, because she's such a legend of the sport.
Well, thanks for that, Wayne. I mean, this is one of the most comprehensive reports I've seen or heard on the Olympia, so opened my eyes to a few things. Before we wrap it up, I've got a couple of questions for you that I've just sort of planned, and one is that it's a surprise question that you didn't know I was going to ask you about, but I'm sure you've got your input. We've got a new pro bodybuilder now in Australia, and that's Justin Vessels. He won the 2 weeks ago. He won the IFBB Pro League Australian titles.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
2 weeks before that, he won the New South Wales qualifying title, and then he won the Australian titles. He beat Lucky Hatzipoulis, who also made a comeback to the stage. Tony gave him his pro card on the stage. He accepted, and Tony gave him an invitation to the Australian Arnold Classic, which he accepted.
That's huge information.
So I think it's exciting. And the condition that Justin brought to the stage was, and you know what his conditioning is like, it was just next level. There was nobody that came even close.
Really?
And Josh Lenarnowitz made up a post saying that he's been to 2 Olympias, a number of pro shows, and he has not seen that level of conditioning on any pro bodybuilder in any contest that he's ever been to. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's amazing news, and I think it's exciting news. I wish it had happened a couple of years ago, but it's never too late. And if you look at people who are in their 40s, such as Shawn Roden and Dexter Jackson and other champions, it's never too late to come into an event in your best ever condition.
No.
And I've admired Justin's physique for a long time. It's good to see this recognition has come. And in 2010, he won the Navi Universe Best Poser Award. Were you aware of that?
No.
And so he can do all aspects of the sport, from the presentation to the condition.
His presentation is flawless.
Yes.
The compulsories, everything is just flawless.
Yes.
And the package he brought on the stage was a pro quality package. He was so far ahead of second place and every other competitor. It will be just interesting to see how he will go as a pro. And my prediction is that he's not the biggest guy. He'll only compete at around 100 kilos, but I think his condition is going to wow some judges, and in maybe some smaller, low-tier pro shows, he will be a top placing finisher.
So you're saying he will be probably in the Arnold Australia?
He will be doing the
next
Arnold
year.
Australia. He has already said that I'm doing this Arnold Australia.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. We haven't had a new Australian guy in this contest for a few years, to the best of my knowledge. But certainly not somebody of his calibre.
Not of his calibre. Last year, with the way the Pro League now works, there's going to be 2 new pros every year. They'll be giving out a pro card at the national titles, and then a pro card at the Arnold Classic Amateur Show as well,
Right.
Australia.
Yeah.
So last year, Nathan Williamson from Melbourne won the amateurs, and he competed in the Arnold Classic. But I don't think, he didn't make an impact, I don't think, like Justin will. I think Justin will, to the point where I'm going, because I want to see Justin compete.
Yes, well, I'll be there.
Yeah.
And Tina will be there. And going back on Justin's record, he holds the record in the NABBA organisation for the most national titles.
Well, do you know that Justin is undefeated in Australia in his bodybuilding career?
No, I didn't know that.
25 years his bodybuilding career spans, and he has never lost in Australia from his first win as a junior to now his win and getting his pro card. The only place he has been beaten on is the World NABBA stage.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
So it's a phenomenal record.
It is.
And it would go right up there with me as one of the greatest amateur bodybuilders this country's ever produced.
Well, I'd have to agree with that, because if you asked me who was our greatest amateur, I wouldn't really have an answer. I would only think, first of all, I'd think Lee Priest in his brief amateur career, because he went professional pretty early.
Yeah, pretty quick, yeah.
And he had a good career, and Nick Jones had a good career as an amateur.
Yeah.
And did well at internationals.
Mm.
So, but I hadn't considered Justin, who of course tops that with
That's
what
right.
you've just said.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, and one of the nicest gentlemen you'll ever meet in your life.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really exciting.
It is, absolutely.
Just a couple more questions. Based on this Olympia and your experience in the last 20 years, how do you see the evolution of not just the Olympia, but bodybuilding itself?
Okay, well, the evolution of bodybuilding since Dorian Yates has been that it's been getting huge. It's been size and mass with some condition has been the criteria. So the evolution after Lee Haney and before then So Dorian Yates was the turning point where mass and size has been the biggest criteria that everybody has been striving for.
That's
so
right.
it went from Dorian to Ronnie to Jay to Phil. But this year, when you think of Shawn Roden, I don't just think of mass, I think of condition and shape and size, roughly in that order.
Yeah.
So the evolution now is starting to swing back, perhaps, because it's only 1 year, towards the more aesthetic look and towards the shape and condition being equally important as size and mass, because in the past it's been unbalanced for size.
Yeah.
And you could say Big Ramy epitomises that direction, and Shawn has pulled it back this year to a much more pleasing look, a look that the judges like, the audience like, I think the fans in general like, because he's got a total package, particularly from the front, this beautiful midsection, and everything else is in good comparison to everything else.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the biggest arms, he doesn't have some of the body parts that Phil Heath has, but taking everything together, he had the best look, the best package. So that's how that's evolving. There was also another thought I had that I was going to say about the evolution. Let me just quickly look at my note that I prepared on this. Which page is this on? Second or third page?
First page.
Oh yeah, the evolution. Okay. Well, partly the evolution is another aspect. There's a whole lot of different classes these days. So
That's right.
bodybuilding is diversifying into many different classes and also to the different federations. So, for example, it depends on your body type. You can go to the federation that has the body type class that you think is best for you. A few years back, you didn't have so many choices. So there's much more diversity these days based on your size and shape. And as you know, with your own competitions, then you have age groups within classes and divisions, so that nearly everybody can compete on a level playing field, can't they? So you don't have to compete against 20-year-olds if you say 45, if there's an over 35 or an over 40 class. And the other thing is there are now crossovers. And when I was first following bodybuilding, and up until fairly recently, you could only enter one class per contest.
That's right.
Nowadays, there's crossovers. There was one guy I know in the amateur Olympia, he did 3 classes.
Yep.
I think if you're in the Masters, for example, you could do Masters, and I think you could do Classic, and then you could do Open Bodybuilding.
Yeah.
That's just quickly coming to mind without thinking about it. So that's another area of the trends that are happening in the evolution of bodybuilding. The other thing is that the bigger contests with these more competitors means that theoretically there should be bigger sponsorship, because bigger audiences, more bums on seats, more people, more friends and family. So it's theoretically better than for the promoters, because the cost of running a contest must be enormous.
Yes.
So the more competitors paying entry fees or crossover fees and more families coming along, it's got to be better for everybody. So it's a win-win. The competitors have more choices, the promoters have a better chance to cover their costs, and I think that's one of the reasons why you see so many contests now, with so many divisions and so many different federations. So therefore the strongest federations, who can grow and listen to what fans want, they will do best, and the federations that don't grow, don't adapt, are the ones that are going to struggle and maybe slip back, and who knows, even disappear. And Arnold has been calling for this evolution in the look for a couple of years.
That's right, he has been, yeah.
And he's wanting more emphasis on posing routines and condition and shape.
Yeah.
And so I think Arnold would have been very happy with the outcome of the Olympia this year. So that's a very quick look at the evolution, say, over the last 20 years, the changes in bodybuilding, and I hope that this trend that we saw this year will continue.
Yeah, I agree. I think if the contests and the promoters didn't evolve, a lot of people actually, there's always this element on social media that they complain about all the divisions and I wish bodybuilding was like it used to be. But I think if bodybuilding was like it used to be, it would have died a long time ago. Yeah. I think by introducing the new divisions, opening it up to more female divisions and to everyone else, it saved bodybuilding and bodybuilding contests. And you're right, the federations that haven't evolved with that are the ones that are now struggling. Yeah.
That's what happens. Because the bodybuilders will go to the federations where they feel they're treated best, where they have their interests understood and looked after, and with the promoters who treat them the best. That's very much what I hear in feedback from the bodybuilders, that they appreciate the promoters that treat them with great respect. And then there are a few promoters around where the bodybuilders feel they're disrespected.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are going to lose out. I'm talking about those sort of organisations, because now you've got to be on the side of the bodybuilder, make him feel important, treat him well, have good rewards for their success, and then you're going to have very happy competitors.
That's right. Just one more, quickly. It seems that the pros are getting older, that they're staying in the sport longer. Compared to back in the 80s, you had the young guys like Rich Gaspari and Shawn Ray who were in their very early 20s competing as a pro. Now, it's most of the pros and the ones that are winning are in their 40s, have been competing for a long time and are now winning the shows. What do you think about that?
Well, it's true, because you've got guys like Dexter and Kai Green, and of course Shawn Ray. Kai Green may be retired. He's never officially said I'll never compete again, but he's presently out of the sport, but I'm told still in very good shape and still huge. So you've got guys such as these champions are in their 40s, and they're very, very competitive, particularly when you say Shawn Roden. And Dexter's always been competitive. So I'd love to see Kai come back. And Ronnie Coleman competed up to about the age of 40, maybe just before 40, but anyway, he competed up to a good age. So that's the trend of the future. And then you mentioned Justin Wessels. How old would he be now?
Justin is also, I think, about 43 or 44.
Yes, and he's right at his peak.
Yeah.
So there's another good example right here in Australia. So I think that is a trend. They know how to keep their condition longer. And if you want to go right back, Albert Beckwith also knew how to do it, and that was a long time ago, and he was competing in his 50s.
That's right, yeah.
Right at the very top level, and also Robbie Robinson hung in there at a considerable age and was still a champion. So it can be done, but I see it's happening more and more. I think another reason could be this. There's more rewards in bodybuilding these days. There's more money around. There's more, the social media makes you such that you can make money through bodybuilding. So it pays to stay in the sport longer if you want that to be your career and your income. Whereas in the older days, you just got very little money from bodybuilding, then you went and opened a gym.
That's right.
If you're a champion or perhaps ran a contest. But nowadays, if you keep your name out there in front of the public, you can be making money. And you don't even have to be a totally winning bodybuilder, because look at Rich Piana and other such people that had huge social media presence. And so that is the thing of the future. Keep your name out there, keep competing, stay competitive, and stay in the sport longer.
That's right. Good way to finish it. Thanks, Wayne. That was great chatting to you again. I always get so wrapped up in talking to you that we could talk for hours, and I'm sure we'll do another one some other time. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you so much for welcoming me into your home.
It was a pleasure doing it, and it was good to be able to talk about all of the Olympia, because the bits that I've seen on YouTube have mostly only been talking about Shawn Roden and Phil and Mr. Olympia, and we tried to give equal credibility to every aspect of the Olympia this year. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about every class.
No, thank you very much, and to all our listeners, thank you very much. And if you enjoy the podcast, just go out and review us on iTunes. That always helps and gets our name out there, and share it on your own social media platforms. So thanks everyone again, and we'll catch you next time on Australian Muscle Podcast. We've added this on to the end of the podcast because we finished recording, and we realised that we didn't speak from our Olympia coverage about the Amateur Olympia, which was held on the same weekend. And this was one of the ones you also filmed, was it, Wayne?
Yes, I was there specifically to be filming the Amateur Olympia because it's becoming, and it is very important to the Olympia organisation, to have this early part of its history properly recorded and properly shown on the big screens for the fans. The theatre that it was in was packed out for the 2 days of the Amateur Olympia.
So this is an amateur contest.
Yes.
Was it just open to American competitors?
No, this year it was
open to international?
the world. Yes, international.
So the winners get their pro card?
More than the winners. In each division, the top 3 got pro cards.
Oh,
such
right.
was the standard, such was the depth that they felt it was justified, and it was,
Yeah.
that they had an overall winner. There was 6 main divisions for pro cards, 3 men, 3 women.
Yeah.
So each division, it had an overall winner, plus the next 2 got pro cards as well. So
Right.
3 pro cards per division. was
So
handed
division
out.
as in bodybuilding,
Yes.
classic physique,
Yes.
and men's physique?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in the women's, there was women's physique, bikini, and I think it was figure.
Right.
So that's 6 divisions with
Yeah.
these pro cards.
So this is one thing I knew there was an Amateur Olympia, but it was, again, hasn't been publicised hardly at all.
No.
And so, for instance, the overall winner, what's he like? Is he a worthy pro? Where was he from?
Okay. In the Amateur Olympia, the overall men's bodybuilding winner, because that's the one who's most important,
Yeah.
was a guy from France called Theo Liguria. And he was 25 years old.
From where, sir?
France.
France. Yep.
Never heard of him before. Well, I hadn't, because I'm not up with European bodybuilding these days. He was cut and he was massive. So, in other words, he looked ready to step onto a pro stage. Completely unknown, I would say, outside of Europe.
So did he win the...
He won the overall men's bodybuilding.
and he won his class
Yes,
in
I think he
super
was,
heavyweight, or...
Yeah, I think he was super heavyweight.
Yeah, so
he
over
was
100.
big.
Yeah.
Yes. So he was just outstanding. And he's the only name that I've written down in the men to chat about because he was just so outstanding. So he's one to watch out for in the future.
Yeah.
And if you look on YouTube, it's an unusual name, but you can find video clips of him, so that he's going to get more publicity. But not being an American, he hasn't got the publicity post-Olympia that he probably deserves.
Yeah.
Now, the other standout winner for me in the women's division was a woman called Lena Varela. Now, she was born in Colombia, she lives in the Dominican Republic, and she has an American husband. So she's got good connections, you might say, to the whole world with her background, and she won the overall in women's physique and was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
So she's going to be, I keep in touch with her through her husband. She's going to do pro qualifiers in the next 12 months to try and be qualified for the Olympia women's physique for next Olympia.
So they didn't give these competitors the opportunity to then go into the Olympia the next day?
No, because they all have to do a pro qualifier,
yeah.
a
Fair
qualifier enough. To qualify for the
Yeah.
Olympia. Now, with women's physique, Alina's husband told me she has to win a pro women's physique contest.
Yeah.
To get in the Olympia, not just get second. Although whether they have a point system, I'm not sure. So let's say she got 3 seconds. Is that enough to get her in the Olympia?
It could be, actually.
Could be.
I think they still do have the points.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she may be very consistent but get seconds.
Yeah.
But she wants to knock it out and win one and get into the Olympia by winning her way in. So that's her goal.
Yeah.
And she's got a 12-month plan mapped out ahead with her coaches. She's got coaches, the very best. And I went through her posing with her and had a few tips for her and so on. That's going to the best they can find in all areas for nutrition, posing and training.
Yeah.
That's how seriously they take this sport, and she wants to be well, she may be probably the first Colombian to qualify for the women's physique in the Olympia.
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine she probably would be. And of course, where she lives, Dominican Republic, that's famous for bodybuilding champions. There's, for example, Victor Martinez,
Yes. Yeah.
and so on. There's been many great bodybuilders come from that small island. So it's a hotbed of bodybuilding. And the other person I wanted to mention, they discovered an outstanding new MC for this contest. Now, I've never talked about an MC before, but his name was Billy Garnon. He's an Irish guy, and he has worked in USA, and he was an amazing talent as an MC. And by that I mean he was amazing that he kept it going along at a fast pace. He was never disrespectful that the bodybuilders felt they were being brushed aside, but he had to keep moving to get through 600 bodybuilders over the 2 days, whatever the number
600.
was. 600. So let's say on average 300 per day.
Yeah.
They just had to get it through fast, and he just did a magnificent job of building up the audience's enthusiasm, treating the bodybuilders well, getting them on and off quickly, having them pose for photographs quickly at the end for the winners, but not too long, so that he just had it just moving along so superbly. So I see this guy getting a lot more work as an MC, because he was a completely new face for me, somebody that I'd never heard of before, but he's a person to watch out for. So I would say that the IBB or the Olympia are grooming this guy for the future for MC work, because he's, as I said, he's an outstanding young talent. And at the end of the day, he did a very professional thing. He gave me all of his notes and all of his minutes and everything from his podium.
Yeah.
He says, because I don't need this paperwork. He said, Wayne, I'm sure that you will want to see this and put it to good advantage. And it was a very kind gift that he gave me, because I didn't have to go worrying about competitors' names, numbers, and where did people place. He just gave me all of the paperwork from the roster. It was just fantastic, and I've never had that before.
Yeah.
So summing up, the Amateur Olympia, a huge success, 2 years old, and it's just getting bigger each year, and I see it even bigger next year.
Yeah. And it was held in a separate venue?
No, not really. It was held... The Orleans Hotel has 2 sections. It has the arena, which is a huge stadium, which is about a 300-metre walk from the hotel itself. So that's the arena, and that holds about 6,000, which is how many I estimate they had for the pro shows. And in the Orleans, they have different rooms. So they have a showroom, and the showroom, which is a theatre, which is on the ground floor level, that's where they held the Amateur Olympia for 2 days. And then upstairs they have other meeting rooms and ballrooms and so on for the smaller aspects of the event, for athletes, registration and so on. So this was the only real event held in the actual hotel, in the showroom, and then all the pro events were held at night at the arena, and then the pro women's prejudging and classic physique judging was held at the expo stage, and the expo stage is at the Las Vegas Convention Center on the other side of the strip. So it's about a $20 taxi ride to the expo center, or you can go on the free bus which runs from the hotel to the expo. So that's how they use different venues very efficiently to run the whole event. But when you say the amateur event is on the weekend, strictly speaking, it's on the week of the Olympia, because it was Wednesday and Thursday, and then the pro show Friday, Saturday, and then they have the winners seminar Sunday morning.
Okay,
so
very good.
That's a quick summing up of the whole thing.
Yeah, and who was the winner again? The men's winner? The French guy?
Oh, the French guy, the amateur winner, Theo Liguria.
Yeah, I have to look him up.
If you put it in even to Google with the wrong spelling, it'll still probably find him, because it's such a unique sort of an odd name, but it's Liguria, so that's how you would put it in, and you'll find this guy. And he's definitely a star for the future, but he's got to qualify if he's going to get into the Olympia for next year.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that, Wayne.